If you've been thinking about job searching, September might just be your golden ticket because there's a lot of opportunity for you to get a job offer before the end of the year. But here's the catch, it's also one of the most competitive seasons. So you need to make sure that you're using the right strategy, otherwise you're not able to stand out. So how can you actually do that?
In this video, we'll break down what is the September surge, why it's such a powerful hiring season, the biggest mistakes we see, and what it is that you can do to position yourself to land more interviews and an offer by the end of the year.
I'm Joanna.
And I'm Roxanne.
And we're the co-founders of Tech Talk, and we've been hiring managers for the last 8 years. And we've helped over 300 people land job offers in this market. And we want to show you how you can do exactly the same thing before December. So we all know the job market is really tough right now. You've probably seen a lot of different articles or people posting about that on LinkedIn. And it's true, there are thousands of people applying for every single position out there, which makes it super hard for you to stand out, get interviews, and even land a job offer. But one thing that I want you to understand is that it's not because there are less companies hiring right now. If we actually look at the amount of jobs that are posted right now and 5 years ago, 8 years ago, that number hasn't really changed much. What has changed is the number of people that are applying now, because you have people that have been laid off and also people that are applying from other countries. So if we look at the people that are working remotely now, that number has skyrocketed in the last 5 years. So you're not just competing with people in the same country as you, you're also competing with people that are applying from other countries as well. And that's why the job market is really, really saturated. So bottom line is we are living in an employer's market, which means that the companies have the upper hand because there are more qualified candidates out there than there are jobs. So what I wanted to understand from this market is that companies can be pickier. And that's why sometimes you're seeing companies doing 8, 10 rounds of interviews because they can afford to just prolong that process because they know they have a lot of applicants in the market that just want to go through it. And sometimes you're also going to see companies offering lower salaries because of that too. So only candidates that are really managing to stand out are candidates that are able to move forward in the process. And that's why it's super important for you to have a good strategy when you're applying for a job and not just applying for everything that you see. Because I can guarantee you're not going to get any interviews and job offers if you do that.
So what is the September surge? September is the second busiest month of the year when it comes to the job market. So as you can see on this graph, after January, September is actually the month where we see the most job vacancies posted out on the job market. And so this is a great opportunity for you to land a role before the end of the year. Now, hiring slows down over the summer, and so we see this surge and spike in September. But why does this happen? The main 3 reasons this happen is that managers are back from their summer holidays, so things within the company just happen a lot quicker. Then company budgets also reopen. So by September, most companies would have signed off their resource and planning for the following year, and so that means they already have a very good idea of what headcount they need in order to hit their targets for the following year. This means that recruiters are rushing to fill these roles by December. Their aim is to get these roles filled immediately so that people can be ramped and ready to go by the 1st of January 2026. During this time, you're going to see a lot of job postings across a range of roles, but some of the most popular ones are sales, marketing, operations, product management, and it's a particularly good time for recent graduates as graduate programs start opening in September. So what does this mean for you? Yes, there's going to be more job openings in the market for you to go for, but there's also going to be a lot more competition. So this means timing really matters. You want to be one of the first people to apply for these roles and also one of the first people to network with the teams from these companies. And whether it's September or any other time of the year, quality will always beat quantity. So you don't want to spend your time applying for hundreds and thousands of applications a week, but rather you want to be targeted and really go deep. So you want to aim for a handful of applications, but high quality ones to get the results that you're after. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see candidates make is come to the September surge and not be prepared and not even have an application strategy. So they use the same CV across a bunch of roles, the same CV for finance, marketing, and sales, and then are surprised that they're not getting the results that they want. Now, one of the other big mistakes I see candidates make is not spending any time on networking. This job market is a fight for visibility, and gone are the days of you just being able to submit your CV and get an interview. So you need to be spending time with the people of the companies and teams that you're after to get your visibility where it needs to be. Then the other big mistake I see is people getting discouraged when networking doesn't work straight away for them. Now you're going to send a couple of messages, some people are going to respond, some people aren't, but from the people that are going to respond, you want to follow up until you manage to get those first conversations started. So don't give up at the first hurdle. And why don't you make a game out of it? Try to see what kind of messages land better and then just build on that.
Okay, so now we know what the September search is, but how can you actually prepare for it so you have higher chances of getting an interview and getting a job offer before December? But before I get into it, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more tips on how you can get hired in this market. The first thing that you need to understand, which is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making, is thinking that the CV is the most important part of your application. The CV is important because this is the first thing the recruiter is going to be looking at when they see your application, but you have two other pillars that are as important as your CV: LinkedIn and networking. And I'm gonna break each one of them down for you. As I was saying, your CV is the first thing that the recruiter is looking at. So it's very important for you to be positioning yourself right in your CV, because if the recruiter looks at your CV and they don't see what they're looking for, they're not gonna call you for an interview. So it's very important for you to personalize that CV for every single position, because another thing as well is that ATS systems are getting very advanced. So they're getting advanced on how they're filtering out candidates even before they reach the recruiter. So you can think of keywords, skills, even location. So that's why you really need to personalize your CV for every single job you apply for, because you need to make sure that it goes through that system and it gets in the hand of the recruiter. From there, you just need to make sure you're telling a good story in your CV, so then the recruiter calls you for an interview. The second pillar is going to be your LinkedIn. And you need to think about your LinkedIn in two ways. One, optimizing it for search, and then also to improve your credibility. 95% of recruiters are actively looking for candidates on LinkedIn every single day. And if you're not showing up to them, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. Because what's happening now, and I've spoken to hundreds of recruiters about this, is that companies are not posting jobs anymore. What they're doing instead is they're getting the recruiter to go after the candidates that would be a good fit for the role, and they're messaging them. And the reason they're doing that is that because they know the moment that they post a job, they're going to have thousands of people applying for that job, and the recruiter is going to have to screen through all of them, not knowing if there's even a good CV on that pile. And the second thing is that LinkedIn is what you actually use to network. So this is a place where you need to be showing your credibility. So things like your profile picture, your headline, and even recommendations, those are all things that actually get the recruiter to see you and want to message you back. So make sure you're optimizing your LinkedIn for search, but you're also building your credibility inside LinkedIn, because this is what's going to get the recruiter to actually want to message you and call you for an interview. And the third thing, which is what most people underestimate, is networking. It doesn't matter how good your CV is, your cover letter, your LinkedIn is, because if you're not getting in the hands of the recruiter, you're not getting an interview. And this goes back to the market right now being a fight for visibility. So what that means is that your CV, when you apply for a job, is just sitting in there and no one is ever looking at it. So you need to make sure that you're creating that visibility for yourself, reaching out to recruiters, hiring managers, peers, people that work in similar positions than you within that company that can basically get your application in front of the recruiter. But just because you network, it doesn't mean you're going to get interviews. You actually need to be sending really good messages that show your value to the recruiter and the hiring manager, so they actually decide to reply to you as opposed to the other 100 people that are messaging them. Once you're applying for jobs, you're going to see that a couple of the things that you're doing are not going to be working, but it's very powerful for you to understand what's not working so you can actually fix it. And I'm going to show you right now 3 things that you should be watching out for. The first thing is that if you're getting automated rejections the moment that you apply for a job, usually within a couple of minutes, it means that the recruiter never saw your CV. You're getting rejected by the ATS system. So remember what I said, the ATS systems are becoming very advanced on how they're filtering you based on skills, keywords, and also location. That's why you need to make sure that your CV is being personalized for that position. And I don't want you to spend 1 hour doing this. I want you to spend maximum 10 minutes personalizing your CV for every single job that you apply for. And to help you with that, we created a Tech Talk AI assistant that helps you personalize your CV for every single position in under 5 minutes, and the link is on the caption below. The second thing you need to be watching out for is not automated rejections, but if you're getting a rejection after a couple of days, usually within a week or even 1 to 2 weeks after you apply for that job. Usually what that means is that you did get through the ATS, which means your CV has the right keywords and the right skills, but then when you got in the hands of the recruiter, they didn't think you would be a good fit for the role. And that's where positioning comes in. You need to make sure that even though you're adding the right skills and the right keywords, you're adding it in an order that makes sense for the recruiter to digest the information and think that you're the perfect fit for the job that they're hiring for. And then the third thing, which is where 90% of the applicants are, is that usually when you apply for a job and you never hear back from the company. It's good that you didn't get any automated rejections, which means that your CV is good, but then you're also not getting through to the recruiter. This means that your CV is just sitting on a pile with thousands of other CVs and the recruiter is never looking at it. And that's why we say that this market is a fight for visibility. You need to make sure that you're putting your CV in front of that recruiter. And if you just cold apply, it's very hard for that to happen because again, you're competing with 10,000 other applicants. And that's why we say that networking is really important. You need to find who the recruiter is, who the hiring manager is, and also other people within the same department that you can network with in that company. And you need to do that for every single job that you apply for. Because again, this is what's going to create that visibility for you, is not just applying for the job. And I can tell you that 90% of the people that are inside of our community are getting interviews and job offers from networking. It's not from cold applying. So make sure that you're putting your value up front when you're messaging them.
So how can you stay organized during this September surge? What I'm going to do is break down a 3-month game plan that you can use to get an offer by December. For the first 2 weeks, all I want you to focus on is building the foundations. I want you to take your CV and LinkedIn and rebuild it with your target role in mind. So making sure it's got the right keywords, skills, tools that a recruiter for the role you're targeting will be looking for. Then I want you to do a bit of research and identify 10 to 15 dream companies that you would like to work for. And let's call this your target list of companies. Within that target list of companies, I want you to start having conversations with other people in the role that you're targeting. So let's say you want to work in tech sales and you're going to be applying to a sales development representative role. Then I want you to grab that target list and start looking for other sales development representatives within your same location that you can start having conversations with. Here you're testing the waters and getting comfortable with the idea of sending connection requests to people. Then in week 3 and 4 is all about applying and networking. Here, what I want you to do is build this habit of every day of applying to at least 2 to 3 jobs per day, and for each one of those jobs, networking with at least 5 people within that company. As you start applying for these roles, I want you to track these applications and the progress of each one of these applications in a tracker. This is a great way for you to analyze what's working and what's not working as the weeks progress. A vital step during an application is for you to personalize your CV for that specific job description. So let's say you're applying for multiple sales development representative roles, one for company A and one for company B. In company A, the CRM that they use is Salesforce, and in company B, the CRM they use is HubSpot. Now, assuming you have experience across both, what you want to do is in CV A, make sure you highlight Salesforce as a key tool you've used, whereas in CV B, you're going to highlight HubSpot and use that to apply to company B. This is a great way to catch the recruiter's attention by making sure that the recruiter can really catch the most relevant skills and experiences that you have fit for that role. And the last thing that I want you to do for each one of these applications is network. So make sure you're reaching out to at least 5 people, whether that's a recruiter, hiring manager, or peer within these companies to get those conversations started and actually get to know more about the company itself. Then from week 5 onwards, this is when you should start landing your first round interviews. When you start landing those interviews, you should be thinking about your interview answers before jumping on the interview. So what you want to do is prepare a list of behavioral interview questions and technical questions that might come up and write down your answers for each one. Once you've got that, you want to do at least 2 mock interviews per week. Now you can do this with a friend, or you can record yourself on camera and rewatch the recording afterwards. This is super important because one of the biggest mistakes that I see is candidates spending a lot of time researching the company or thinking about a perfect answer, but then never actually practicing their interviews out loud. Then candidates are surprised when they come to interviews and give their answers for the first time and realize that it doesn't flow as nicely as it did when they were reading it out in their heads. Then all confidence is lost and you don't want to be that candidate. So make sure you practice those interview answers out loud. Even though from week 5 you'll start landing your first round interviews, I don't want you to stop applying. As we talked about before, this job market is extremely tough. I've seen tons of really great quality candidates get all the way to last round of multiple interviews and still not get the offer, and then having to start all over again because they stopped with applications when they were interviewing. Now, in case the interviews don't go your way, you don't want to be that person that has to start again from scratch. So what I want you to do is just dial down your targets a little bit. Instead of aiming to 10 to 15 job applications per week, you can aim for about 5 to 8 applications per week so that you're still building up your pipeline just in case those first interviews don't go the way you want.
So it does sound like a lot, but I don't want you to spend a lot of time on unnecessary things. So here's how I want you to spend your time on each application that you're submitting. Make sure to take a screenshot so you don't lose it. And if you want access to all of the resources that we talked about in this video, just make sure to check the captions below because we added a link to our Tech Talk community where you can have access to all of our resources. And also don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get more tips on how to get hired in this market.